You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone.
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Captain Kirk, I shall consider it.
I've been a participant in some of the most insidious lies and witnessed to deeds that no crazed man could imagine. I spent years watching you from my lofty position to know that you were the one I could trust.
And why did you lie to me?
There still exists some secrets which should remain secret. Truths that people are just not ready to know.
Who are you to decide that for me?
The world's reaction to such knowledge would be far too dangerous.
Dangerous? You mean in the sense of outrage? Like the reaction to the Kennedy assassination, or MIAs, or radiation experiments on terminal patients, Watergate, Iran-Contra, Roswell, the Tuskegee experiments. Where will it end?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Get out!
Or what? You'll kill me?
Always remember, dissension's the greatest form of patriotism.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies.
We have before us the opportunity to forge a new world order.
Yes, we can. And you say.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
A lie is most convincingly hidden between two truths.
Well, I guess it won't end.
No! I don't have time for this. This is about saving the future of humanity.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
I want you to get up right now. Go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm a human being. My life has value, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You shall not pass!
You're listening to the Revolutionary Radio Project with your host, Rob Skiba.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight we're going to continue dealing with a topic that may just be the mother that gave birth to the motherlode of all conspiracies. That, of course, being the Flat Earth controversy that I've been covering for a number of months now, actually. I can't believe I've been doing a series since April, I guess. But my guest tonight is somebody that I was actually surprised that he jumped on the bandwagon too, and I happened to catch a couple of his radio broadcasts and saw that he was looking into it and was taking a pretty firm stance on it. My guest is Zen Garcia. He's the webmaster of the truth-seeking network called FallenAngels.tv, whose motto is, "The seeker of lost paradise may seem a fool to those who have never sought the other worlds." He also hosts a show on Revolution Radio, not to be confused with the Revolutionary Radio Project, also on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Studio B. He's the author of 7 books: Look Somewhere Different, When the Evening Dies, A Different Way of Being, Lucifer, Father of Cain, Awaken to the New World Order, Sons of God, Who We Are, Why We Are Here, Skyfall, Angels of Destiny, and the Aramaic and Palestinian Targums. And you can find his books at zengarcia.com as well as lulu.com and, of course, amazon.com. His radio shows are on, he's got one on Blog Talk, blogtalkradio.com/Fallen Angels TV, and also on freedomslips.com. And it is my pleasure to welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project, not for the first time. He's been on my show before when I was on Blog Talk Radio, but for the first time here on Truth Frequency Radio Network. Zen, are you there, sir?
I am, brother. It's a great honor to join you, and I applaud you in all of your efforts because you have been on the forefront of this topic, and you have done fantastic shows. Really single-handedly just dismantling the whole globe theory and all of the, the lies and the deception that are being perpetuated by NASA. And with your background in showing, step by step, how they have perpetuated this lie, it really is. You should be applauded for all your efforts.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. I've been on record as saying, look, I got a website called Testing the Globe because that's all I'm doing. I'm a questioning globalist at this point, and I've been looking for that one solid piece of evidence that's indisputable before I will commit to saying, okay, yeah, I'm a flat earther. I mean, people who have looked at my website, they watched my videos, they're all convinced I'm a flat earther. I'm like, look, guys, I'm still testing this. I haven't found that one solid piece. I've found a whole lot of what I consider to be extremely compelling evidences to look at, but I thought I had it, man. With that video of the moon going across the earth, I thought for sure that was the one. But I did some tests here in my office this week and had to actually put a video out called Rob Skiba Debunks Rob Skiba. I had to debunk myself on it. But, it's a frustrating topic, to say the least, but it's also very exciting, and I'm excited to talk to you about it because I listened to, I think probably 4 episodes that you did on the subject, and I was really intrigued that you were on it. So before we go there, let's give a little bit more of your background, though, for the sake of my listeners here that probably haven't heard you on my other show. Just give us a little bit more of your background other than what I read in your bio, if you would.
Well, I've been seeking truth ever since I was young, and when I was 24 years old, I acquired a disability that really gave me the time to study and look at scriptures in a way that I never had prior. And up until that point, I had been involved in reading much of what is the New Age and Sumerian mythology and all the Zecharia Sitchin books, and I was involved in shamanism at the time and doing sweat lodges and things of that nature. But I was brought full circle back to the scriptures, read them again with new eyes, started reading all of the extra biblical, extra canonical texts, everything that I could get my hands on, and the internet was new at that time, and all you had to do was type in a word to search out and get so much as far as results and gain access to all of these different books I had never heard about. And so I started reading all this material, and in the process of doing that, I kept having these different themes present themselves to me, and they were things that were not being discussed or talked about, things that I did not learn when I went to Sunday school, and that the mainstream church was not talking about. And so I decided to collect all this information and started sharing it on radio programs. I was invited to be a guest a number of times, and then after I began doing my own broadcasts in 2008, a lot of my listeners started asking me for the material that I had, so that they could look at it for their own research purposes. And I decided then to compile them into books, and I've been publishing books on Christian themes ever since 2010. And I basically woke up to the New World Order and the whole conspiracy side of reality after the events of 9/11. I think it was 2004, that I really started digging deep into all of what you can find on the internet, and realized that the official story had been a lie, and that what we were being told was not based on truth, that much of what was being pushed as the official story was propaganda. And so what made my show and my work unique was that I was able to tie together the conspiratorial side of what's going on with the New World Order with the biblical and prophetic side of the gospel, as well as tying together the ancient mysteries and the Sumerian mythologies, and the study of ancient texts from around the world, because I study it all, and seeing the underlying theme of truth behind all of these things. I put it together kind of as a puzzle, and then wrote about it and presented this information in the different books that I've written up until this point. And now my latest book, the one that I just sent you the manuscript on, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, that's the latest installment of going down the rabbit hole and trying to find truth.
Yeah, it sounds like we took a very similar path, and it's. I think that's what happens to people as soon as their eyes are open to 9/11. That's sort of like the gateway, because
Right.
as soon as you go through that and you have this paradigm shattered, that wow, I haven't been told the truth, that there are people out there who are lying to us on a regular basis, and that evil really does exist. And as the saying goes, I've seen the enemy, and it's us. That's pretty frightening. And you start looking into these things and realize, wow, it is all tied together, and inevitably, you're right. The Sumerian stuff comes up, the Babylonian stuff definitely comes up, the Egyptian myths, Osiris, all that comes up, and you see that there is a Luciferian agenda at work, and the fallen angels are very active and have been for thousands of years, doing things in this world. And most recently, though, we found ourselves stumbling on this subject of the flat Earth. Now, what was it? Now, people who have listened to me know that I listened to a radio show that was done by Basil and Gons called Canary Cry. They interviewed Mark Sargent, and that was sort of my introduction to the whole thing. What was yours?
My listeners kept emailing me flat Earth videos. And for the longest time, I didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to look into it, didn't want to give any time to it, because with my disability, I try to use the time that I'm sitting in my wheelchair to be as productive as I can.
Sure.
And so I don't like to waste time. I try to accomplish tasks that I can't do when I'm not sitting. And so I work on my books while I'm sitting up, or I do research, or I go outside and I read biblical texts, anything to be productive in that regard. And so for the longest time, I avoided it. And then my listeners and some of my closest confidants, some of my friends who are also broadcasters, they told me that there's something to it, and that I had always pushed that we should be open-minded on topics and not have any kind of judgmental bias without doing any kind of research into it, and so I had to either prove myself a hypocrite or open myself to the possibility of the flat Earth, and so I went into the debate with open eyes and decided to give it a few days. And after 3 or 4, it wasn't long at all, I realized that there was something more to it.
Yeah.
And that, excuse me, I found myself looking at more than just the videos that they had sent me. And I started clicking on all the recommended links on YouTube, and found myself really going down the rabbit hole deeply.
Yeah, I remember listening to the show where you sort of just kind of came out. I was like, you know what, this is what the evidence is showing, and I've got to take a look at it. And like you, I've built my entire ministry on saying that the Bible is the source of truth, and that we can take it literally. And I had people on my Facebook page hounding me for, it had to be at least 2 months. Look into this, I'm like, this is, what are you kidding me? This is 21st century.
Right.
Really? We're doing this now? I mean, seriously? I blew it off. And then somebody, they just laid the gauntlet down and said, okay, Rob, prove it. Prove we're on a globe. And I thought that would be so easy to do. It should have been really easy to do in my mind. But as soon as I began to actually look into this stuff, particularly the various pictures, the photographs of the Earth, that we've all seen the pictures, and that's what we will point to. And you start looking into it and realize it's either paintings or composite images, or completely fraudulent or questionable at best. You start thinking, well, maybe there's something to it. And what I should have done first, I actually did second, and that was consult the scriptures. And man, as soon as I went there, and I really did try to go to the scriptures without preconceived biases. And in other words, we all have this bias of the globe. Since kindergarten, we've seen the thing. And so you read the scriptures with this preconceived notion, and you sort of manipulate and twist the scriptures into a pretzel to fit your preconceived notions. And I did my best to try not to do that. I thought, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna be honest with the text. I'm gonna be honest with myself. I'm just gonna read it, come to it fresh, as if I've never heard of the globe. I know nothing about the globe. What does the text say? And brother, when I did that, I was stuck at that point, because I'm like, from Genesis to Revelation, it's a flat Earth book.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I did the same thing as you. I instead of referring to the scriptures first, I looked at the NASA material, and having discovered that, they basically faked that they had seen the Earth as a globe using the lunar module window, and other deceptions. And when I realized that they were trying to trick us into believing a certain way, well, after that, of course, I went to started looking at the scriptures, and also the same thing as when you went to the beach and you were looking at the horizon, and realized that there was no curvature, and trying to prove curvature, and how is it possible that being able to see Chicago across was it Lake Michigan, or seeing the Statue of Liberty, the buildings being straight up and down and not leaning away from you. All of that proved to me that there was no curvature. And then things like reading about cannonballs being shot and how they go the same distance. There's no movement to the Earth, and even though there's the whole thing with the Coriolis effect, it's still, when somebody jumps out of an airplane, a parachutist, or a hot air balloonist, when they lift off from the Earth isn't spinning away from them at 1,037, .5146666. I don't know if you've seen that, but
No.
there's all these 666 numbers involved in the mathematics, which support the globe theory as well, and that to me signifies the sinister nature of the forces that are aligned against the flat Earth revelation. And so all of these things together, and then my study of, as you have, using the Strong's Concordance to really look at Isaiah chapter 40, things like Psalms 19 with the tabernacle of the sun, and then the one that just absolutely blew my mind and locked me into understanding the model of the world as being a flat circular plane was when I revisited the Book of Enoch, the courses on the heavenly luminaries, which I heard a show where you were talking about how you were working on a project where you were deciphering the Book of Enoch and adding a lot of footnotes, and that you had stopped at that particular, I believe it's chapter 71 where it starts, but I went back and started to read because I had read the Book of Enoch several times and I never understood the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. It didn't make sense to me, and I realize now that it didn't make sense because I was trying to apply the descriptions of the motions of the sun and the moon as Enoch describes it to the globe. And it just does not work that way. And then so when I realized that the flat earth was key for unlocking the Book of Enoch, I stopped what I was doing because I was at that point working on a book on the war in heavens, and I was almost really done with it. But when I realized that the flat earth was the key for unlocking the Book of Enoch, and that the reason people did not understand his description of the motions of the sun was because we were trying to apply it to the globe, the whole model of the globe, that's when I began working on the book that I just released. I published it yesterday on Rosh Hashanah, but and so that's the manuscript that I sent to you, and this is the only way to make sense of what Enoch is describing. And this again applies back to several things in the Bible, like when Joshua, the Most High gave him the power to stop the sun and the moon, which that would not make sense if you think that the earth is rotating and orbiting the sun. Why wouldn't Joshua demand or command the earth and the moon to stop in their motion? Why would he command the sun and the moon if it's the earth that is spinning that keeps the sun from going down at sunset? And the same thing with the Book of Enoch. Why would Enoch spend all these chapters describing the motion of the sun and the moon and not the earth and the moon? Because there's 0 chapters describing the motion of the earth. And, when you understand that it's the sun and the moon which rotate and revolve above the circle of the earth, then all of that completely makes sense. And then it makes complete sense why Joshua was given the power by the Most High to stop the sun and the moon, because it would be the stopping the sun in its mid-revolution that keeps it from leaving, reaching the vanishing point and, disappearing for the day. And so all of those things made sense when I applied the flat earth to the study of the book on the courses of the heavenly luminary.
They say in real estate that the key to real estate, is location, 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 right? And I've heard it said that when it comes to biblical hermeneutics, studying the scriptures, it's context, context, context. You have to. The only way you can truly understand the scriptures, or really anything, is what's the context. And it is clear, crystal clear to me, that the context that the entire ancient Near East, at least, if not the entire world, whatever shape it may be, the context from which they operated was in the context of the snow globe model, basically, the circular Earth under a dome. And yet, you're right. I had been through the book of Enoch many times myself with all the Nephilim research, and I know you've done a lot of similar research. So
right.
That's the source book for that kind of stuff, really. I mean, there's so much information there. But same thing, as soon as you get to about chapter 72, and it starts describing not just the course of the sun and moon, but all the heavenly luminaries and just the setup of the Earth itself, when you're stuck in a sort of a Carl Sagan, Stephen Hawking view of the cosmos, and none of that makes any sense. And I had decided, when I published my book, Genesis and the Synchronized Biblically Endorsed Extra Biblical Text, I wrote an introduction to that book. And in the introduction, I said that I was working on a standalone version of the Book of Enoch that I was going to annotate and write commentary to and everything. And I had gone through most of it and written extensive notes. But you're right, I stopped. This was a little over a year ago. I stopped at chapter 71. I dog-eared the page, put it aside. I got sidetracked with some other work. And then when I started looking into this flat Earth thing, I did the same thing you said. I said, I'm going to go back and look at the Book of Enoch again. And I opened it up, dog-eared chapter 72, the book of the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And I'm like, I just started laughing because I had just made that video of showing the course of the sun and moon over the disk of the Earth using stellarium, which it took me days to figure out how to get it to do what I wanted it to do. But I was convinced that if I put my location in Antarctica and played around with the camera settings in the various view modes, that I would be able to depict the sun and moon going overhead in its full cycle. And I picked Antarctica because I figured that would be what I really wanted to do was see, where it talks. People always say they have times where the sun never goes down and times where it's always dark, so I wanted to see it in the software. But an unexpected side effect of that little test was it perfectly illustrated how the sun and moon go over the Earth. And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight my guest is Zen Garcia. We're talking about the Flat Earth controversy, and we're going to be getting into his new book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. And right before the break, we were talking about how we both had decided to go back and revisit that book. And wow, I mean, as you do, and if you put aside the preconceived notions of the spinning heliocentric globe model in an ever-expanding universe, the Book of Enoch really comes alive. And what really got me, Zen, is when I got to chapter 89, and that's where you're in the prophetic dream of Enoch, where he has sort of this Animal Farm style dream, and he basically goes from like creation right to the end of everything, right through the millennial reign and all of it. And in that chapter, as he's describing the way the flood happened, he's talking about that he looked up and he saw the lofty roof. In verse 2, he says, "And again I raised mine eyes toward heaven and saw a lofty roof with 7 water torrents thereon, and those torrents flowed with much water into an enclosure. And again, I saw again, and behold, fountains were opened on the surface of that great enclosure, and that water began to swell and rise upon the surface. And I saw that enclosure till its surface was covered with water." And he goes on to describe an enclosure that has a roof, that has openings through which the windows of heaven were opened and water came through and filled up the bathtub, basically causing the flood. And I mean, when I got to, again, I opened the page, I had dog-eared at chapter 71, I opened 72. It starts to make a lot more sense, the sun and moon going over the Earth. I seem to confirm it with stellarium, and then I read chapter 89, and I'm like, man, Enoch is a slam dunk for the flat earthers.
Oh yeah, I fully agree, and also in studying, Isaiah chapter 40, because I know you've done this as well with the Strong's Concordance, looking at the difference between the description of the Earth as a circle and trying to find a word which would apply to the Earth as a planet or a globe or anything like that. And the closest that you can come is the word ball, which Isaiah uses 18 chapters prior. It lets you know. And then the description of the earth as the foundation and the heavens being spread, the firmament being spread as a curtain above it, it fully ties in with what you were just saying. I mean, the circle of the earth is the floor, and the canopy or the globe, the dome-like, the covering, the curtain spread above it, it fits exactly with what you're talking about, and the description of the world together, the foundation of the earth and the heavens, the firmament spread above it, as a tabernacle or a tent, that makes sense with the order of creation in Genesis, because if you think about it, prior, if you try to apply the order of creation to the earth spinning in orbit around the sun, why would the Most High make the earth first and then create the star that the earth is supposedly in orbit around next, and placing it in the firmament? That doesn't make sense. But when you understand that the earth is the foundation for the heavenly luminaries and that the firmament is spread above it, then that completely makes sense.
Yeah, the Isaiah 40:22 thing, I have to admit, for as recently as this past December, I was teaching the spinning heliocentric globe model idea, the canopy theory as it was called, with the earth as a ball had a canopy of ice around it, and that was the firmament. But again, when I go back to the scriptures without preconceived notions, I saw things that I had read it. I can't tell you how many times I've read it and quoted it and used it in presentations. But in Genesis 1, it tells you that that God put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament on day 4, and not outside it and around it. And it's like it just left off the page. I'm like, how many times have I read this and didn't see it? And yet I taught a paradigm that forced a view of that text to say that the sun, moon, and stars were outside of the firmament, and that the firmament was this ice canopy thing. And that's what Kent Hovind teaches. That's what Carl Baugh teaches. That's what a lot of creationists teach. That's what I taught. But that's not what the scriptures say. And when I've talked to people about this, especially Christians who don't want to go down this path, they'll all throw out Isaiah 40:22. But what struck me is if you go back one verse prior to verse 21, Isaiah 40:21 says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? Hath it not been told to you from the beginning," i.e. Genesis? "Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretch out the heavens as a curtain, and spread them out as a tent to dwell in." In other words, he starts that famous verse that everybody uses by encouraging the reader to go back to Genesis. He's asking,
right,
haven't you read it? Haven't you seen it? Haven't you been taught about it? And I'm going, wow, and you're right. Isaiah, of all the guys in the Bible, he's the only guy, at least in the King James, who uses the word for ball, but he doesn't use it to describe the earth. He uses it in 22:18. And the other thing about 40:22 that's problematic is it says he stretches out the heavens like a curtain and as a tent. Now, what ancient tent, because you've got to put yourself in the context, we talked context earlier, of Isaiah, what ancient, Bedouin-style tent goes all the way around you, under your feet, and everywhere?
Exactly.
A tent is set up on a flat earth surface, stretched out over it. And he's using that metaphor to describe the snow globe.
Right, exactly. And, there were 3 other things, because when I finally embraced the flat earth and started really studying the Bible, and I covered this in the new book that I just released, but there were 3 other things. One in Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar describes seeing a tree growing up from the midst of the earth and reaching to the heavens, and he says that the tree is that it's able to be seen from every end of the earth. And then the other one is when Yeshua is taken up by Satan and showed all the kingdoms of the world, taken to an exceedingly high mountain, and he's offered all of these kingdoms if he would just bow in worship before him. And then the other one where he returns for his second coming, and like lightning is seen. Every eye, it says in Revelation and in Matthew 24, that every eye shall see him. Well, all of that I really didn't even think about it. But when you try to apply that to the earth as a globe, it doesn't make sense, because a tree or even a mountain, how would you see all of the kingdoms of the world? Because at some portion of the earth would be on the other side if we were living on a globe. And even with his returning, even in the clouds with all of the saints, some portion of the earth, the people on some portion of the earth, just would not see him. But if you apply those three things to the flat earth and to the current, those events and their occurrence in with that kind of a premise, then they absolutely fit and make sense, and also align with what Isaiah refers to in chapter 40, and also with what Enoch describes and talks about in the courses on the heavenly luminaries.
Yeah, like I said earlier, from Genesis to Revelation, man, the whole thing is flat Earth. Because, like
Absolutely.
I said, when you start off in Genesis, like Isaiah said, haven't you heard? Haven't you seen?
Right.
And then you get to Revelation, and you're right. I mean, so much of Revelation now really comes alive for me as I'm looking at this stuff. I mean, and the other thing that struck me about looking at the Bible from a flat Earth perspective is all the prophecies. I mean, Isaiah talked about it, Jesus talked about it, Peter talks about it, John talks about it, that the stars are going to fall to Earth. It's all the stars of heaven are going to fall to Earth like figs. Well, in our normal cosmological worldview that we're taught in school, that's very problematic and, in fact, impossible.
Right.
But if we're in a snow globe, then the stars are not what monkey man science is trying to tell us they are. They have to be something different. Now, I know what I believe the stars are. What's your take on the stars in the snow globe? What do you believe they are, and how far away do you think they are?
Well, I know, but just by looking at the sun, when you watch it going down in the clouds at sunset, or like if you watch a video of a weather balloon being sent up, you know how they're doing that lately, to trying to determine the horizon, what the horizon looks like. Well, you see the hot spot when it gets really high up. You'll see the hot spot of the sun reflected off of the cloud bank. And that, to me, designates that the sun is a lot closer. Definitely not 92,960,000 miles away. And also with the way that it descends through the clouds, with the varying degrees, the angles of the sun's rays, they spread out in a fan-like kind of spectrum at all different angles. And if the sun was 93 million miles away and of such immensity that 109 Earths could be spread across the breadth of its diameter, then all of the sun's rays would hit the Earth parallel to one another, and there would be no deviation to the angle of it's being cascade on the Earth. And so that, to me, means that it's a lot closer than what we are told. And I also cover in my book how Enoch describes the sun moving through the 6 gates of heaven, which are spread from the Tropic of Capricorn to the Tropic of Cancer, and that it takes 6 months for it to travel in slow daily revolution up and down between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. This, to me, also designates that the sun has to be much smaller than the breadth of that distance. And if you look up the degree as far as latitude, it equals like 69 miles for every 1 degree. And when you multiply that by the 23 degrees north latitude and 23 degrees south latitude, you get a distance of 3,174 miles. And so the sun has to be smaller than that 3,174 mile distance. And Another thing, as far as since we're talking about sunsets, as far as curvature, when you're out on a beach and you're watching sunset and you see the sun going down, most people will be able to relate to this experience. You see a line refracted off of the ocean, or if it's a big lake, you'll see a line between the sun and the observer going all the way out to until the sun reaches the vanishing point, and when it disappears, then that line disappears. But before then, you will see a line going all the way out from the feet of the observer all the way out to the point where the sun seems to set on the horizon. That to me signifies that between the observer and the sun, the earth is completely flat, that there's no curvature, because if there were, you would never be able to see the sun reaching all the way to you, and in that, reflecting in that as a line between you and the sun. If there were curvature, that line would be broken somewhere between you and the sun.
Yeah, this is there's a number of websites popping up, or not so much websites, but blogs and whatnot popping up on websites where various Christian authors, apologetics types are out there trying to debunk all this stuff that we're talking about. And inevitably, they always seem to point to Eratosthenes and his grand experiment of seeing the shadow, Syene and Alexandria, a longer shadow of the obelisks and whatnot. And his conclusion, because the shadow was like straight down where he was, and he knew, I forget how far away, 80 or 200 miles or something, whatever it was, the obelisk shadow was longer. His conclusion was the Earth has to be a ball. And so he comes up with a mathematical equation that if you keep drawing the line of the two obelisks till they meet on a ball, then you can come up with a mathematical equation that will explain how big the ball is. So he comes up with 25,000 miles in circumference based on pure speculation. There's no way he could have proved it. All he proved is if you got two sticks on a ball, you can come up with the math to figure out how big the ball is. I mean, I applaud him for that. Good job. You got some good math going on there. Way cool. But you didn't prove that the Earth is anything.
Right.
And when I'm screaming at these guys who they think they're so smart. Oh, we got you now, flat earther. We got Eratosthenes. You guys are idiots. This was figured out 200 BC. But what they're not considering is that the flat earthers, this isn't catching them by surprise. As you pointed out, the sun has to be way smaller and a whole lot closer than what we're told in Monkey Man science, and that it is the sun and the moon that are moving, not the earth. So over 60 verses in the Bible describe the sun, moon, and stars moving, 0 for the earth moving. And if you've got a small sun over the area where Eratosthenes was, then sure, that the sun's above the obelisk. It's going to have a shadow straight down. And it will also cast a long shadow for that other one that's further away on a flat plane. So Eratosthenes didn't prove anything. And I'm like, what do you guys, why all these websites and blogs and everything popping up, like, oh, he's the guy, he figured it out. I'm like, he didn't prove anything except, you can create cool math to figure out if you put sticks on a ball, but that doesn't prove that the Earth is a ball. And so once you realize, okay, the sun and moon are a lot closer and a lot smaller, then what are the galaxies and the nebula and the stars?
Right, which I didn't get I forgot to answer your question. They signify to me that, they're definitely not stars, and how NASA speaks of the cosmology as that all these stars are millions and billions of miles away, and that they all have their own planetary systems, and all of that to me is, that they're just lights in the heaven. It's like I was also talking about in my book how the days of the week, they receive their names from the cosmology, like Sunday from the sun, Monday from the moon, Tuesday, and all these different days are from these different gods, but they all are also represented by the different planets, and how the Earth is not represented in that cosmology, because it's my opinion that the ancients knew that the Earth was different than the other planetary bodies. That's why they didn't, assign the Earth with the same designation, like as Kronos, for Saturn's day, Saturday, or the sun and the moon, and or Aries for Mars. These different planets, they knew that they were different than the Earth, which again falls back on the order of creation. And so, as far as what the stars are up there in the heavens, they're certainly not these massive gaseous bodies that science is claiming that they are. They're luminaries. They're lights, and the different stars that comprise the zodiac. They are also, the zodiac is for measurement of time. Same thing as for the sun and the moon, and how the day is based on the movement of the sun once around the North Pole as it cycles and revolution above the Earth, and how a week is like a equivalent of a quarterly phase of the moon in its cycle, and the month is equivalent to 4 of its quarterly phases, and then these 12 lunar months, which is a whole other thing. In studying about the Book of Enoch and all of the flat Earth as being the key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, I was also led to study and understand God's calendar and how that works, the ancient Hebrew calendar, and how we are deceived now, modern mainstream Christians, as well as the Jews and Seventh-day Adventists. None of them are actually worshiping on Sabbath, because Sabbath isn't aligned to any of these 7 days of the week. Sabbath is determined first by what's called the Kadesh, the time of the new moon, and that has its own day. Kadesh, as new moon day, is counted as the first day and first Sabbath of the lunar month, but it's not included in the 7th-day count of the next following 4 Sabbath weeks, which also align with the quarterly phases of the moon. And I learned how that also falls in line with the study of the 7 Levitical feast days of chapter 23 in Leviticus, and how Yeshua fulfilled in his first coming the first 3 spring and the summer feasts, and how he will fulfill the 3 fall feasts. And all of these things are critical for understanding how we've been deceived, and how modern Christians no longer keep track of Sabbath, as well as how we've been deceived into honoring festivals which are basically an amalgamation of the pagan and Christian holidays back during the time of Constantine, and how most people no longer honor the 7 Levitical feasts and festivals as laid out in Leviticus chapter 23. And so all of those things have been critical for my study of the flat Earth. It's led me to understand all of these other revelations in connection to the flat Earth. And so it's been an amazing journey for me.
That's really interesting. I came at it from a different perspective. Back in 2009 is when I started getting more of an appreciation and understanding of the Torah and God's holidays, his appointed times, his Moedim, and how they all worked. And there's a lot of people. We could spend a whole show debating the merits, pros, and cons, and whatnot of the ideas of lunar Sabbath or weekly Sabbath, or when does the year begin, or is it conjunction moon, or is it crescent moon? And there's still lots of disagreement on that. But what I find intriguing about the whole thing is like there's this convergence of of these themes and ideas that were off everybody's radar 5 years ago. I mean, who was thinking about any of this stuff? And
right,
Mark Biltz was the one that sort of put the blood moon tetrad thing on the map for everybody to start considering, and the fact that they were lining up on the Lord's feast days. Although I will say this, they only line up on the feast days if you go by the conjunction. Again, this is one of those situations where people differ. If the year and the month starts with a conjunction, then yeah, the tetrads are landing on the feast days. If, however, you believe that the years and months begin with the first sliver of the new moon, then they don't line up. But I just find it interesting that all of these subjects seem to be converging. Like, you came at it, I'm looking at the flat earth, and all of a sudden, wow, look at the Moedim, the appointed times of God. This is interesting. Look at the Sabbath and all this. I came at it here. Wow, look at the Sabbath. Look at the feast. This is cool. I'm going to get rid of Christmas and Easter. Oh, wow, look at flat earth. I'm just questioning, going, okay, Lord, what are you doing? Like, why? I mean, I understand getting out of Babylon and getting rid of the what I now call the beast feasts, Christmas and Easter and all that stuff, and getting on God's page.
Right.
With his Moedim, I get that, but I'm like, okay, Lord, why is it that for the most part, for 500 years, most people have believed in the spinning heliocentric globe, but now here we are in the 21st century of all time, of all things, having this discussion. And what intrigued me was that flat Earth seems to be intimately connected with this whole idea of climate change. Or climate chaos, according to the French foreign minister. And if you question anything to do with climate change, you must be a flat earther, i.e. you must be a stupid, ignorant moron. So I'm just, as I look at things, and I know I've heard you say it too, we're all having to reconsider all of our old material, because how does the Anunnaki play into this? How does Planet X play into this? How does all this other stuff, the secret NASA program with the alien bases on the other side of the moon, and all this other rabbit trails that we've been intrigued with, we now kind of have to reevaluate with this new understanding, assuming this is true. And I've been praying like crazy, like, Lord, why is this convergence of ideas happening at this juncture, at this day and time?
Yeah, that's I've been going through the whole same thing in my mind, and all the questions that you just brought up, the quandaries, the conundrums in connection to, NASA and the secret Apollo missions and the Anunnaki, Planet X, all of that. Yeah, I'm having to reconsider all of it, and I'm still undecided on a lot of it. I'm still, because like you, I've only been on the study of the flat Earth for, I think, since maybe July. And
hold that thought.
Well, we'll pick it up. Yeah.
Yep. Hello and welcome back to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba. We're going into the second hour of this broadcast. I'm talking with my guest, Zen Garcia, about his new book, and we're discussing the topic of the flat Earth. And right before the break, we were saying how both of us have traveled down similar paths of research, looking into things like the secret space program and alleged moon bases on the other side, and Apollo 18 and some of the other missions that we weren't told about, supposedly finding aliens out there. And how does all this new revelation fit in with things like the Great Pyramid and Planet X, Nibiru, the Anunnaki, all that stuff? I really don't know. I just did a whole teaching back in December on the Great Pyramid, and in that teaching I was showing how various measurements of the Great Pyramid seem to clearly illustrate a globe. However, I certainly never have, and I don't know that anybody else ever has, applied the same measurements to the idea of the circle of the Earth. And I would venture to guess we would probably be amazed if we did, because the Great Pyramid was built at a time when the ancient Near East, the entire world at that time, believed in the snow globe. So, maybe it's time to revisit all of this stuff with sort of new eyes, at least for the sake of taking an honest look. at the information. Condemnation before investigation is the height of ignorance. So where's the harm in looking into it? That's sort of my position on it right now. But I'm actually quite intrigued to go back to a lot of my old research and see, okay, I did all this with the preconceived idea of a spinning heliocentric globe. What would happen if I looked at it from a stationary, and by the way, I am, while I'm still questioning the globe, I'm not questioning heliocentricity and geocentricity anymore. I'm going to say I'm about at least 99% sure that this place is not moving. Geocentricity, I am sold on geocentricity. But if geocentricity is true, then just about everything else starts to fall apart, because everything that we're taught in the standard model is based on heliocentricity. So if that crumbles, then I think we got to go back to the drawing board on everything. What do you think?
I absolutely agree, and I think it's that we should reassess and relook at a lot of the stuff that we were assimilated into believing when we were children, and so much of what we take for granted, and giving NASA the benefit of the doubt when they are purposely deceiving us, and they've been busted so many times doing so. I mean, just in the number of programs that you've done in covering how they have lied to us, basically photoshopping the Earth, putting it into pictures of these supposed Apollo missions to the moon, and how so many, there's even a picture of the lunar module landing for the first time on the moon. I mean, how is that possible if that's the first time?
Camera crew up first.
Say that again?
They sent the camera crew up first.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's mind-blowing how grand the deception is, and so I think it's wise for us to reassess and look again at a lot of the things that we just have accepted without giving it any consideration. And it's the same thing with the Book of Enoch, because looking at it with new eyes and applying the flat Earth model to it, it helped me to understand the whole text on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, whereas before I was unable to make any sense of it at all. But like, I'll give you an example. A passage in Enoch 71:8, and this is like one of the key passages that didn't make sense to me prior, but in looking at it as if Enoch is looking face down on what is the azimuthal equidistant projection map. The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. So here Enoch is describing the sun taking a circular trajectory and rotating in revolution above the earth. But when you try to apply that passage to the globe, it's like, huh? Yeah. It does not make any kind of sense. But when I applied it again to the flat earth and looking as if I was looking down, almost like if the earth was a clock's face and the motion of the sun and the moon above it, just like the map that they show in the UN flag, which that's a whole nother topic.
I know.
Because it's my opinion that they're flaunting that they know what the real the real Earth looks like, but it almost like a Masonic handshake, like a secret gang sign to their affiliated members. But anyways, when you apply it, this particular scripture to that model of the Earth, then it clicks. And then when you look at the rest of the passages from chapter 71 through 82, I believe, which in this book I cover every one of the scriptures in all 12 of these chapters, and I show people what Enoch is talking about. I explain it. There's photo, illustrations so that people can understand what he's referring to, and help people to understand even the 6 gates, because he's talking about the distance between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and how it moves back and forth, and how every month there's a 30-day window that it moves from one gate to the other, and then that there are 4 days where it takes the sun 1 day to either cross over the equator, or having reached the Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn, to reverse course and return in the opposite direction, just like what you showed with how you were able to get the stellarium to, as it applies to, circling above the face of the earth. And so all of those things, it's a fascinating discovery, and that's why I stopped the work that I was doing in that book on the War in Heaven, and began working on this book, because I felt like, with so much interest now, so many people being led to look at this particular study, that nobody had relayed what Enoch was talking about in describing the motions of the sun. There's a lot of people that allude to his description of the motions of the moon, but I couldn't find any books or any particular web pages that talked about his description of the motions of the sun. And the reason being is because we're all trying to process his vision according to the heliocentric model, which you can't make sense of it when you're trying to apply it in that way.
Yeah. When you were looking into the issues of the various gates, because that's something that kind of tripped me up, I was thinking, okay, what's he talking about? I mean, it uses words like portals and gates and stuff, and so it sounds like when we hear that there's a physical structure that the sun is going through, but I don't think so. I think that unless it's a metaphysical thing that we can't see, but I'm wondering if these gates and portals are maybe not a way of if you're looking down from God's point of view, if the gates and portals are not something that's in the luminaries. In other words, the constellations, we would call the constellations, the sun's in Virgo or the sun's in this or whatever, the various houses of the zodiac, people refer to the sun being in those houses. So they use similar terminology even today. Even in science, NASA will make references to things like that. So, what's your take on? Is that what you're thinking, or do you have another view of the gates?
Well, I explained this exactly, because what Enoch is describing as the 6 gates is, if the equator exactly splits the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Right.
Well, Enoch describes the sun's movement through these 6 gates, and he begins with the sun aligned exactly on the equator of the vernal, on the day of the vernal equinox. That's where he begins his account of the sun's motion. And then he talks about it taking 30 days to go through the 4th gate. Well, if you look at the distance between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, the first 3 gates are from the Tropic of Capricorn. The 1st gate, 2nd gate, and 3rd gate reaches the equator. And then the 4th, 5th, and 6th gate are above the equator. And so he will talk about how it takes the sun 30 days to go through each one of these gates. And just as you saw when you applied the movement of the sun according to the stellarium, the sun moves 30 days through the 4th gate, 30 days through the 5th gate, and then 31 days it will reach the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice. And it spends that 1 extra day reaching culmination at the summer solstice, and then reversing course will begin to descend back through the 6th gate, the 5th gate, and the 4th gate until reaching the equator on the autumnal equinox. And then it descends through the third gate, the second gate, and the first gate. And on reaching the first gate, that will be winter solstice. And then it reverses course and goes back up through the first, second, and third gate until reaching the equator again. And so that
the gates, what are they? I mean, is it just a
it's just a distance. It's each one of the gates is the equivalent of 30 days. What takes the sun 30 revolutions, it takes the sun 30 revolutions, 30 days, rotations to go through one of the gates. It's not that it's, a portal that it goes through it on this side and it comes out on the other side. Right. It's just a measure of distance that divides the distance between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And so when you understand it this way, as I explained in my book, he talks about, he breaks down the equivalent of the proportion between day and night for each one of these gates. And the equivalent is 18 units. And so when the sun is directly on the equator, it divides day and night by 9 units, which equals to like 11.9999 hours. Basically, all you have to do is divide 24 hours by 18, and you'll see that it equates to 1.33333 hours. And so it changes as the sun climbs through the gates or descends through the gates. It will increase its proportion by 1.3333 hours as it goes through each one of the gates. And so the 6 gates just apply to its movement over the course of a year between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And so it when you understand it this way and you look at the gates, because as I said, there's illustrations that divide the gates and help people to understand it. And then when I explain it with the breakdown of day and night, and I also talk about how, because God's calendar, the way that it begins on the vernal equinox with spring. You know how the Gregorian calendar begins on January 1st in the middle of winter. That's not how it's lined up. The progression of the seasons is spring, summer, fall, and then winter, as is described by Enoch, which he begins on the vernal equinox, and on the vernal equinox, that's the first day of spring, and then it goes through the 3 months until reaching summer solstice, and summer solstice is the first day of summer, and then as it falls back towards the autumnal equinox, that's the first day of fall, and then as it arrives to the winter solstice, that's the first day of winter, and that's the progression of the year according to God's calendar.
And you cover that from, looks like, section 2 in your book, pretty much chapters 15 through 24.
Right. The section 2 is all on how I decipher the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. The first part is about setting the foundation for what I'm going to be talking about, and that I cover the Isaiah chapter 40, the entire chapter for the most part, because I think it's important to look at the full context of the entire chapter instead of just the one passage as far as verse 22. And when you do that, you understand that the earth was established first, exactly as you were describing with the previous verse, where it refers back to Genesis, how the earth was established as a firm, fixed, and stationary foundation for the curtain of the heavens, the firmament that was spread above it. And there's several, passages in the Bible which also allude to the earth being firm, like Chronicles chapter 16, where it says, "Fear before him all the earth, the world also shall be stable. that it be not moved. Psalm 93:1, the Lord reigneth, he is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved. I mean, there's so many passages where it talks about the earth being stationary, fixed, and unmoving, which is exactly why Joshua, referred when he was giving commandment to the sun and the moon to stand still, why he didn't tell the earth and the moon to stand still, because the earth is unmoving and it's the sun and the moon which rotate above it.
So do you think, because that story, Joshua commanding the sun to stand still, I've told that story so many times in my Nephilim talks usually, the various conquests of Israel and Joshua and Caleb and all that, and Joshua commanding the sun to stand still. I always said, whenever I talked about it, I said, now, if my understanding of the cosmos is correct, then the earth stopped rotating for the sun to stand still. Of course, if the earth stops rotating, then you lose you basically lose everything. I mean, the magnetic field goes away, you lose gravity, you have 1,000-mile-an-hour wind shear. Now, this is according to globalist science. Neil deGrasse Tyson describes this in great detail in an interview he was with Larry King. Larry King asked him, what would happen if the Earth stopped rotating? He's like, oh, that'd be a bad day, and here's why, So all the terrible things, according to Monkey Man science, this is what would happen if the Earth stopped spinning. So, and of course, the kindergarten answer is, well, God just suspended all of the laws of everything, to make Joshua's request work. Okay, but that's never going to satisfy an intellectual mind, saying that. But it makes a whole lot more sense if it is the sun and the moon moving, because that doesn't really affect the Earth.
Right.
Not like in the spinning heliocentric globe model. And I keep going back to this thing. If geocentricity is true and the Earth is not moving, and the Michelson-Morley, I think that's what it's called. There's several tests. I forget the names.
Right.
The Aries failure. All these different tests that were done that prove this place isn't moving. Now, all the tests that I've seen and commentaries on it are done by people who believe in the globe, but they're saying the globe is not moving. This place is stationary.
Right.
So, regardless, whatever the shape of the Earth is, we're not moving. So if you realize that the Earth is not moving, then so much of what we're taught in school and in documentaries and TV shows and movies is false. It's just, even if it is a globe, it's so much of that stuff is false. But it seems to me that once you settle on geocentricity and you start to see how the heliocentric model falls apart, as does most of the models that we are told about, then it's not much of a slide from that point over into flat Earth. It seems like a fairly easy slide. Now, why haven't I slid over yet? Well, I will acknowledge straight up, the Bible and the Book of Enoch are absolutely flat Earth books, as is the writing, as are the writings of many ancient cultures. It's flat Earth. But my Bible also tells me in 1 Thessalonians 5:21 to prove all things. So that's what I'm trying to do. I can believe it. Yeah, I believe the Bible's true. I believe the Bible says it's a flat Earth. That is true. I believe that. That's what it says. Can I prove it? Well, that's what testing the globe is all about. I'm trying to go out and prove it. You seem to have read the text and took a step of faith, went out on the air publicly and said, you know what? It's flat Earth. What was it that absolutely convinced you? Was it just the text, or was there a practical experiment or something that you could observe for yourself to confirm the text?
Well, the fact that you cannot, you can't measure any curvature, and in looking at lighthouses, even with the way that railroads, bridges, canals, the engineers that draw up the blueprints, they don't take into any kind of consideration at all the curvature of the Earth.
That's true.
When a pilot is, as far as flying, the people that are going to jump out of his airplane, he doesn't take into consideration which way he's flying or which way the Earth is rotating. and they don't consider, which way the target is going to rotate with the Earth. They jump above it and then they guide themselves down towards it. There's no consideration for movement of the Earth, and so these things together, and then understanding the Book of Enoch in the way that I have, the courses of the heavenly luminaries, that was the final piece for me. And then also, you've seen the video that I've done on where I found the Bible code on which is related to the flat Earth and how.
Explain that for my listeners.
Okay, sure. There's you can go to a website called BibleCodeWisdom.com, and in that particular website you can search key terms, keywords, and you can find, whatever topic it is that you're trying to prove or confirm, or because I believe that the Bible codes are inspired. How else could all of these terms be encoded into the text thousands of years ago? And it's only now with the use of computers that we can even locate these matrices. And so I use BibleCodeWisdom.com to kind of confirm the fringe topics that I am researching. And so, of course, the first two terms that I plugged into the search bar was flat Earth. And when I found that those two terms, I then started to plug in other keywords as it applied to the circle of the earth in the vision of Isaiah in chapter 40. And so eventually I developed a matrix, and the matrix that I was able to find, and people can pull this up for themselves, just go to BibleCodeWisdom.com, type in flat earth, canopy, tent, truth, ring, edge, even, and dome. And you'll find all of these words compiled in one matrix. And as keywords, they apply to what we're talking about as far as the foundation of the earth and the firmament above it, and being in the shape of a tent or a tabernacle. Even, the keyword canopy, the keyword tent, truth, the ring, as far as the Antarctic ice wall as being the edge of this circle of the earth, the flat earth, it being even, and again, the dome above it, as far as the firmament. And so all of these words plugged in, I was able to discover this matrix. And when you pull up this matrix, you see how the words are all spread out in equal letter sequence. It's not like they were just, words straight across, as a lot of, when people search for matrix, a lot of times those words will be found within the text and they'll be straight across. But in this matrix, every one of those words was spread out in this equal letter sequencing, which to me was verification that it had to have been inspired for it to be encoded in the way that you can discover in the matrix. And so that to me confirmed again, as did the Book of Enoch, that this was truth based on truth, and that it was biblical.
And you cover that in chapter 10, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Chapter 10 of your book. Interesting. I know a lot of people. I haven't done a whole lot of research into the Bible codes. I mean, I'm aware of them. I know what they are and what they're about. And a lot of people are really sold on it. I know L.A. Marzulli did a whole thing on it, I think, in his Watchers DVD series. So you actually went out and tried to test that. And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba. For this final half-hour segment, I'm talking with my guest, Zen Garcia, about his new book called The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. And right before the break, we were discussing chapter 10 of the book, where Zen was telling us that he had looked up various keywords related to flat Earth and all that in the Bible codes at BibleCodeWisdom.com. Yeah, it's that's something that, like I said, I haven't really studied that much. I mean, I'm aware of it. I know how it works, but it's not something I've really dabbled with. But it is interesting. You said you plugged this stuff in there, and it seemed to confirm it, huh?
Right. People can do it for themselves, and that wasn't the only matrix. Because you're only allowed to enter so many characters into the search bar. I had discovered so many terms that I began a second matrix, and the second one is flat Earth, fixed disk, ring with ends. And so, this was a second confirming matrix on the flat Earth, so it was indeed encoded within the text. And as I said, people can go there, type the keywords that I gave related to these matrices, and pull them up for yourself and look at them. And it also, when you do that, it tells you what portion of the text the matrix is found overlaid. And so it's an interesting way to, in my opinion, to confirm whether some kind of fringe topic like what we're talking about as far as the flat Earth, whether it is indeed found encoded within the text in this manner.
Well, I mean, just a plain reading of the text, it's not even encoded. It's like, here it is, Earth's flat, set on pillars,
right,
under a dome. But if you really need confirmation, go check out the codes. I mean, it's right there. But I appreciate something you said, though. Go do it for yourself.
Yes.
I've got people on Facebook messaging me, this guy's wrong about this, he's wrong about that, whatever. He shouldn't be teaching if, you can't get this right or whatever. My whole thing is like, look, guys, the Holy Spirit is your teacher. Zen Garcia is not your teacher. I'm not your teacher. Your favorite pastor is not your teacher. Your favorite scholar is not your teacher. All of us are out there doing the best we can with the information that we have, trying to figure stuff out. But we are told to prove all things by the scriptures and to test all the spirits, by the word of God, and to pray and let the Holy Spirit be your guide. It's the Holy Spirit that leads you to all truth. In the meantime, my feeling is, because I have plenty of guests on here, and we don't all agree on everything, but if we agree that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him, then you're my brother, you're my sister. If we can agree on that, awesome. The rest of it, let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. But, anybody listening to this broadcast, look, don't look at me as your source for truth. Don't look at Zen or any of the other people who have been on this show or any other show. Listen to the information and go look it up for yourself. Test it for yourself. I think you would agree with that.
Absolutely. And I think that Proverbs 18, he that answereth the matter before he heareth it, it is a falling a shame unto him. And just as you said, we are to look and to prove and to test it for ourselves. Don't believe anybody else on as far as being an authority on the scriptures, but go and look and see if that's what it says according to your own research and your own study. Because in what I have discovered in my experience is that the scriptures read meaningless until people have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the mind to understand. And that until you do, we just don't understand the revelations and the things that have been there all along. Just like what we were talking about with Joshua, as far as the sun and the moon standing still. When you look at that passage also, there were no repercussions to the earth. When the moon and the sun were stopped in mid-revolution above the earth, there were no repercussions. There were no giant tsunamis, no massive tornadoes, no, earthquakes, and anything that was noticeable that was mentioned within the text, which also shows that, because as you said, if the earth were spinning around the sun and all of a sudden it were to just stop in mid-motion, there'd be massive tidal waves, tsunamis, the whole portions of the earth inundated. The polar cap may have slipped or shifted in some way. Who knows? I mean, there would have been huge repercussions to in my opinion, to something like that occurring. But with the sun and the moon being of much smaller proportion than the Earth, and the Earth being the foundation for the heavenly luminaries, this is further confirmation that the sun and the moon move above the Earth. Which, another thing as far as science, because they're trying to say that the Earth, the whole heliocentric model, and that the Earth is spinning in orbit around the sun, they also say that the moon spins in similar counterclockwise fashion, when Enoch references that both the sun and moon spin clockwise above the Earth. But because they're trying to hold on to this heliocentric model, they say that the moon is in synchronous rotation with the Earth, and that's why it appears that it is unmoving as it goes through its quarterly phases. And so that they explain, and when you look and observe, even like with the lunar conjunction, the moon moves with the sun, meaning that it rises when it rises, it moves across the sky as it moves across the sky, and it sets as it sets. If it were moving in the opposite direction, then it would only be invisible and being unable to be seen for a very short time, as it passed over the sun, or the sun blocked it out. But once they spread apart in their circuits, then the moon would be visible, and it would never hold the similar cycle of going through its phases as we are able to see and observe with our own eyes.
So, in the last 20 minutes we have left, what is your take on all of this? Do you think that this is, let's say it is absolutely proven that the Earth is still circular, flat, set on pillars under a dome? If that's the case, it seems to me that this is the Great Deception. If this is not the Great Deception, I shudder to think of what could be, because this is so huge.
Right.
Do you think I'm coming to the conclusion? I'll just tell you what I think. I am coming to the conclusion that as the more I look into this, and people are like, well, what about the Clark Belt? What about this? What about that? I mean, look, there's a lot of questions I don't have the answers to. Satellites, are they real or are they not real? I have no problem believing they could be real. I don't even have a problem believing the ISS could be real. If the sun and moon are hovering up above us somehow, suspended up there in the canopy, I have no problem believing that other things could do the same thing. However, we're told that the satellites are in the thermosphere, and they call it the thermosphere for a reason, because it's freaking hot up there. And we were told on 9/11, we started the show talking about 9/11, that 3 buildings basically melted or weakened, the steel weakened at temperatures of jet fuel, and in an hour collapse into a pile of ash in their own footprint. So if 3 skyscraper buildings can basically melt with 1,800 degrees of jet fuel, you got to explain to me how aluminum satellites are hanging up there in 5,000 degree temperatures for years and decades in some cases. I can't figure that one out. But yeah, there are a lot of questions I don't have the answers to. I have a lot of the yeah buts too. But the more I look into this, and everybody wants to write off the Chicago skyline and a lot of these other things as it's a mirage, it's an optical illusion. I'm sorry, I'm not that stupid. I don't buy it. And if I was up there, I would rent a boat and I would drive across on a clear day. I would point my camera at the skyline that I could see from one end, 60 miles away, and I would drive right to it and keep the camera on the city. So if you're out there, if you live on the other side of Lake Michigan, the other side of Chicago, if you're listening to the broadcast, please do this test. Go out there and do it. Because if it's a mirage, then when you're driving out towards it, it'll magically disappear, and then you'll see the city roll up over the ball into view. But if it's not a mirage, if it's really the city that you're seeing 60 miles away, then as you're taking your little boat across, it's just going to get bigger. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen, because every test that I have either done myself or have seen others do, testing the horizon, they're seeing stuff that mathematically it's impossible. You should not be able to see. So, for me, this is not a cut and dry case for the globe or flat Earth. There are a lot of variables, there are a lot of what ifs, there are a lot of things that many of us don't understand. But I think this discussion is healthy. And to get back to the question, in your view, could this be that great deception that we were warned is coming?
I absolutely believe that it is part of that strong delusion and I think I heard you say it, that even the very elect, because the very elect are absolutely deceived on this issue. Yes. And still, even though I believe the Book of Enoch and the Bible codes confirm that we live on a flat earth and that it's a flat circular plane and that the earth does not move, there's still, I'm only, since July into this and having written this book, there's still a lot of questions and a lot of things that I'm trying to discover and get answer upon. Same thing with the satellites. My whole conclusion on that is the thermosphere and the temperatures that they say that are up there as far as being up there in the thermosphere. Satellites could not survive being suspended in those kind of temperatures, and so that makes me wonder as to whether satellites are even real or not. Because according to those temperatures, the way that they are made, they would not be able to survive, not for long at all. Being a very pliable material and made of gold, because gold is used to refract the sun's rays and the radiation and protect instruments and solar panels. You know how sensitive those are. But as far as the International Space Station, have you ever looked at the way that it's built? Because if you look at the diagram for the way that it's built, you would think that each portion of it would be compartmentalized so that if there was ever a breach, you could shut off, like, for instance, a submarine. They have airlocks. If one compartment floods, they're able to close these locks and secure the rest of the boat from being flooded by that breached compartment. But the International Space Station is built in such a way that there are no barriers in the interior, so that if a breach happens, everybody is going to end up dead. Everybody will die. And so that to me is makes me suspicious as to whether it is in the vacuum of space, because you would think that the safety of the astronauts would be first and foremost, and that they would build into the infrastructure protections from even simple things like this, and the fact that they don't exist and those safety measures are not implemented and built into the infrastructure makes me suspicious as to where. And then the whole thing as far as air bubbles, where they're filming some of these spacewalks, and then you see air bubbles, or they've actually they've shown scuba divers, with scuba tanks on in portions of some of these spacewalks, and then there was another a video that I have posted on my Fallen Angels TV website where they were showing a spacewalk from the International Space Station and the Earth scrolling by underneath it. And then all of a sudden it goes to a green screen. And you've seen that too?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, man. I mean, this day and age that we live in, it is so difficult to trust anything you see, because with Photoshop and chroma key technologies and After Effects and 3D software, I mean, you can fake everything. I could, if with enough time, I could create just about anything and make you believe it's real.
Yeah, I've seen your work, and it's pretty impressive. And in my opinion, you do a better job than NASA. And so why the whole thing is though, why do they have to fake it? I mean, what's the point if all of what they say is true? Why the deception? Why are they having to deceive us in the way that they are?
Well, that's a good question, and I want to see how you answer this. Because one of the things that people say all the time, one of their knee-jerk reactions is, "Well, what's the motive? Why would they lie to us about all this?" So, what's your take on it? Why would NASA, the governments of the world, and whatnot, why would they be, if the Earth really is flat, why lie and give us pictures of a globe?
Well, I think the reason that they are perpetuating this as being the mother of all conspiracies is because science, they're able to, because they have these PhD degrees and so many people respect their professional opinions, that they are able to separate people from belief in intelligent design. And if you can make the Earth just another one of those random circumstances, just another one of those planets that happens to be in the Goldilocks zone, and that's the whole reason why life evolved into being, then you can get people to believe that it's all just random and that there's no grand creator behind the intelligent design of it. And look at how many people have bought into that we have evolved of apes, or that there's some missing link out there. And another part of the strong delusion, in my opinion, is the whole premise that they're establishing with the Ancient Alien series now, that the missing link is that we were genetically created from, the ancient aliens mating with some one of our ape ancestors, and that's why we've not been able to discover this missing link. And look at how many people, I mean, this is what they're teaching in high schools and elementary and in colleges, and look at how many people have bought into this. How many scientists are atheists and have no belief in God at all and no belief in a creator, and they are fully ready to bow down to these ancient aliens as our creators and our benefactors, and that they're the ones that are going to come and save us and restore the earth to harmony. And so that, in my opinion, is also part of the strong delusion, and it also, if you can, because we know they worship Lucifer as the sun god and as the light bearer, and these Freemasonic secret societies that they worship Lucifer and they worship the sun god, and the heliocentric model. It has the sun as the foremost, as the predominant entity of this supposed solar system. And the Earth is demoted to just being one of its 9 subjective planets. And so all of that is similar to their demoting of God and their exalting of Lucifer as the Antichrist, and that the heliocentric model is basically the New World Order. It's Satan saying, "I will exalt myself above the sides of the north. I will be like the Most High." And the United Nations flag, just like with in time of war, when an enemy is vanquished, they will raise the flag to signify their defeat and their control, their conquest over them. And the United Nations, being the seat of the New World Order, that's exactly what they did when they raised the flag depicting the flat earth. They're basically laughing at the world. Oh, we're teaching them heliocentricity, but we know the truth. And they're signifying to all of those that are affiliated with their secret societies, to these Freemasonic groups worldwide, we have succeeded in bringing forth Pike's vision. The whole 3 world wars to bring on a one world order, the establishment of a one world government. And this is setting the premise for the one world religion, one world government, one world people, all of that they are trying to do in order to bring forth the Antichrist to reign over it all. And that, because it's not just the United Nations, it's also the International Civil Aviation Organization, the International Maritime Organization, the World Health Organization. All of them fly these flags with the depiction of the flat earth on them. And so it's just their way of saying to their members, their secretive groups, we have succeeded in conquest, we control these different groups, and because they bear our flag, and it's their way of laughing at us at the same time that they're showing that the flat earth is occult knowledge.
Yeah, when I did a Facebook note a while back called Probably Just a Coincidence, and I was showing that, first of all, I started off with the Gleason New Standard Map of the World, 1892, which is the flat earth map, but at the top of it, it says scientifically and practically correct as it is. And you're like, I mean, this is an official new standard map of the world, 1892, and showing the flat earth map. And as you said, all those organizations have that same logo. The one that really caught my attention, though, was the United Nations Business Partnership patch. This is like a international business organization of some sort. The patch has the letters UN over the UN flag logo, the flat earth map, and right below it, it says, "We believe."
Interesting. No, I hadn't even seen that.
I'll send you a link to that note. It's like, come on, really? I mean, if they're trying to avoid a conspiracy, they're not helping with the logos and titles like, Operation High Jump and Fishbowl, Operation Fishbowl, and
right.
I just think this is a worthy topic to look into. Congratulations on beating most of us to the punch and getting a book out. I'm still working on mine, but thank you, by the way, for sending me the first manuscript. And this is the first interview you've had on it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you allowing me, because I really respect your work and I respect your open-mindedness, and I applaud your efforts. And I think it's wise for you to be cautious, to not jump to any conclusions, but to take your time on these matters and to really, explore every angle of the discussion. And in interviewing people like myself, and I know that you've shared this same kind of conversation with many others, I think that all of that is setting a precedence for many people that had never even wanted to, never even opened themselves to the possibility of discussing these topics, and that you're doing a great service to the kingdom, because it is my belief that this is absolutely biblical.
I share that belief for sure. It is absolutely biblical. The challenge is proving it. And you know what? I'm going to continue on this quest. I would encourage everybody else out there to continue on this quest. And one of the ways they can do so is checking out your new book. And where can they contact you? Where can they get the book if they want to know more?
Just go to zengarcia.com and click on the contact us. It'll give you my email address. Let me know that you're interested in it. I'm changing just a couple things, adding just a couple things. So give it a week, and you can go to lulu.com, because that's where it'll be published. I'm published through Tate, and I'm going to give them a chance to carry it, but I haven't presented it to them yet, because there's a lot of illustrations, and they're a little bit funny on that side of it, but I will give them a chance to carry it if they so choose. And if they do, it'll be carried through Tate Publishing as well.
Well, that'd be pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, you do have to be careful with the images, because copyright stuff, a lot of these guys are real.
Right.
And you do have to be careful with that. I knew that when I was going into publishing my first book. Tom Horn was like, yeah, you might want to change or get rid of some of these pictures, because you don't want the hassle. But congratulations on getting this done. This is pretty exciting. You got 32 chapters here, and what's the page count? 200 and
218, and that's letter-sized pages, so it's 8.5 by 11, which if I were to reduce it to the regular 6 by 9 that I usually publish in, it would be 400 plus pages.
Oh, this is 8.5 by 11. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. And, I have to tell you what has amazed me about this subject is when I was a missionary for 6.5 years doing the kind of standard evangelical type of mission work, and God called me out to look into UFOs, aliens, and Nephilim and all that stuff in 2010. And I was reaching a lot of people with the Nephilim stuff, which shocked me. I was like, wow, I'm reaching more people than I probably did with all the other mission work. I don't know what your experience has been, but this flat Earth thing is really resonating with people. When they get over the cognitive dissonance of it, I've been getting lots of letters from atheists and agnostics and Christians that are now going back to the Bible. It's having a pretty amazing impact that I would have never imagined would have happened.
Well, for me, it's like the whole 9/11. Waking up to the conspiracy side of what's going on with the New World Order. It's a paradigm shift. It forces you to reassess every aspect of what you thought you knew as truth. And 9/11, waking up to that whole thing, did the same thing for me. It turned my world upside down. And it made me begin to look at things in new light. And it forced me to research, not just trust the official story or what propaganda news was saying was relevant to as far as discussion or presenting as official news, but that there were more things to learn about. And then I learned about the Illuminati and that you couldn't even trust your doctor as far as vaccines. I mean, there's so much to it, and this flat Earth thing is the same thing. It's a huge paradigm shift. It forces you to reassess and look at the scriptures in new light and to apply, even like what we were talking about with the book of Enoch. None of us would have been able to understand even what I told you about with the gates of heaven. Yeah. It just does not make any kind of sense when you apply it to the globe model of the earth. But when you plug in the flat Earth as key, it opens up and makes its revelation. It brings it to your awareness and gives you the ability to understand it. And that to me was absolutely exciting. That's why I stopped what I was doing with the other book that I was working on, and that's also another reason why I was so hush-hush for such a long time on what I was working on, because I knew that somebody else could do the same. But now that I've actually written the book, even if somebody were to go and to look and to study the scriptures as far as the book of Enoch, the courses on the heavenly luminaries, they still wouldn't be able to interpret it in the way that I have in this book, because there's just so much to it.
Well, and that's the thing. I think there are lots of people doing all kinds of similar research, not just on this topic, but other things. And it's like God's Spirit is being poured out because, just even on the mark of the beast and Nephilim and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many times where I'd be invited to speak at a conference or something, and with no prior coordination at all with any of the other speakers, inevitably we'd all be talking about the same thing, and we're like, wow, So for me, I just take it as confirmation. If somebody else comes out with stuff it's comparable to what you're saying, you're like, you know what, it's pretty awesome. But wow, man, you must have really just knuckled down and bang that out, because I knew you would just kind of come into it. I started in April, you started in June, and to have a book out in 2 months, that's pretty dedicated time right there.
I've been working on it nonstop because I wanted it, because I know there's a lot of agnostics and atheists that are studying the flat Earth, so I didn't want to just create another one of those flat Earth books with the scientific and observations on the curvature and things like that. I wanted to come at this topic from the biblical perspective, and unlocking the course on the heavenly luminaries served as a foundation for presenting the information in that way, and then adding in, the Strong's Concordance on Isaiah chapter 40 and Psalms 19, the Tabernacle of the Sun, the Bible codes, things of that nature. It gave me an outline to add to, and then as I was studying the book of Enoch, that's when, I was led to the Levitical feast, chapter 23, and also to God's calendar and how all that works. And so all of that, in writing it, all of that other information came out to be part of it. And so I've been blown away by the research of this book, and it's changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this is your first sort of introduction to the feasts, I just want to encourage you on that, because when I first started dabbling into it back in 2010, I was blown away by the amount of messianic revelation that is literally embedded in the feasts, and how they're all about Yeshua, man. It's all about him. And so I just want to encourage you to keep going on that. God uses whatever bait He can sometimes to reel us in. For me, when you're studying the Nephilim, of course, as you know, not only the Book of Enoch, you're going to spend time in the Torah.
Right.
And I'm looking for Nephilim around every corner, and I'm finding all kinds of cool stuff and stuff on Nimrod and whatnot. But in the meantime, God's word does not return void. So He's going, hey, check this out. Hey, look at this. Look at this.
Yes.
Look at this. And now all of a sudden I'm just we're in the fall feast season right now, and and people are still arguing about the dates and the times, and I want to encourage you also to keep researching on the Sabbath issues. I think Sabbath is really important. I went down the lunar Sabbath
me too, brother.
path for quite a while. I'm doing the weekly Sabbath thing, doing Friday evening to Saturday evening. For me, just doing what I can to get on what my understanding of God's Sabbath has radically impacted my life. I don't think there's anything wrong with worshiping on Sunday. I think you can worship on every day of the week. But,
yes, absolutely.
But Sabbath is Sabbath. Now, is it a lunar Sabbath? Is it a weekly Sabbath? We may disagree, but my encouragement to you would be just keep going, man, because God's word does not return void. He's going to get all of us in sync. The conjunction moon, the crescent moon. Some say it's no moon at all. It's this, that. Look, we're like kids right now drawing messy cartoons and handing them to our father, and he's going,
yes.
You know what, I'm going to put I don't know what this is. You say it's a pretty picture of a horse, but to me it looks like a blob, but I'm going to put it up on the refrigerator. I think our Father is happy and honored that we are striving to understand Him and walk in His ways. And so I just want to encourage you, brother, keep going on that, because all this other stuff, is fascinating as it is. My whole thing is the key to our survival, whatever is coming our way in the near future, is being on God's page.
Absolutely. That's first and foremost.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much. It was awesome talking with you again. It's been a while, and I really enjoyed having you on tonight.
Yeah, likewise. Same for me, man. And I appreciate the opportunity. And do let me know when you want to join me on Revolution Radio, and we'll reciprocate, and I'll be glad to interview you on the same kind of topics.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both on Wednesday nights, right? You're
right. I'm 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, so it's a lot earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's totally
2 hours before your show.
Yeah, I'm Wednesdays are good. Anytime prior to my time slot. So whatever Wednesday you have available, I'm probably going to be able to do it. So just you let me know.
Okay, well, I'll send you an email. We'll shoot for just a few weeks down the road then.
Okay, sounds good. We got about 2 minutes left. Anything you want to say to our audience before we close out tonight?
Well, I just think it's important to be open-minded to topics that you don't understand, and to not immediately jump to conclusions.
Whoa, I guess we don't have 2 minutes. All right. Well, thanks again, Zen, for coming on tonight. And Thank you guys for listening to the Revolutionary Radio Project. We'll see you back next Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Central. Good night, everybody.